Network Automation Nerds podcast. Hello and welcome to Network Automation Nerds podcast, a podcast about network automation, network engineering, Python, and other technology topics. I'm your host, Eric Cho. You may have seen the hashtag Lab Everyday on social media, or you may have come across the Lab Everyday, hashtag Lab Everyday channel on YouTube that aims to inspire and motivate people. Today on the show, I am super excited to welcome my friend, DuAn Lightfoot, creator of the Lab Everyday movement and currently working as the developer advocate at AWS. Welcome to the show, DuAn.
Hey, what's up, Eric? Thanks for having me. Hello, everyone.
Hey, I am super excited to have you on the show because not only you inspire people, you actually pave a way forward. It's not just like, hey, look at me, I'm so cool. It's like, how can you be as cool as DuAn? And every time you learn something, you're trying to share as much knowledge as possible, and that is super cool.
Yeah, I like to say, the road that I traveled was nothing but rocks and gravel. And so, yes, honestly, a lot of the things that I've done and the places I've been, when I started in tech, there was nobody that looked like me that were doing the things that I was doing. So, having that guidance, having that mentor, that I could connect with, relate to, that was kind of challenging, and I really didn't know how to navigate tech. And so now, I really just focus on giving back the things that I'm learning in my experiences.
I think that's very true because and we're going to talk about more about kind of being Black and in the tech industry, the challenges and the rewards and all of that a little bit later in the show as well. But I think that's very true that you kind of led this movement. I don't know if it's just me, right? Because it's almost like I bought a blue car and now every car sees blue. But now that I've seen you and I've befriended with you, chat with you on a regular basis, now I've seen a lot more, Black and minorities in the tech space, especially network engineering.
Yeah, it's really come a long way. I can't wait till we talk about that because I got my own, viewpoints. So like things that are happening now and things that, kind of need to happen, to really make it better. So we'll talk about it.
Yeah, another thing I like about you and your approach is, and we will talk about it, I promise. But what I like about it is it's a serious topic, right? And it's something that deservedly so be serious about it. But you also have a lighthearted approach to it, right? It is a serious topic, but we don't have to take it so seriously, and we do have to discuss it in an open fashion. But it doesn't need to be like in a classroom and everybody take out pens and start taking notes.
Yeah, it's not really something I really openly talk about every day. I'm the type of person that likes to put in the work and do what needs to be done. So one of the ways I do that is by helping people get in rather than talking about how we can get people in. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, as soon as you have more people in, then it's almost like cultural understanding by osmosis. It's just like you're just being there, and then you hear the link, the talks, and you kind of share the experience, and then it automatically, not automatically, I guess. It's more, you get on more understanding.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. All right, cool. So before we get into it, and I think actually it's a good way to get in touch of the all the topics we're going to talk today. It's just that I follow you for a long time, and I kind of know the stories that you share. But for people who maybe haven't heard of you, or maybe who were not as in-depth knowledge of your background, can you tell us a little bit about how you got into tech, how you got started, your military experience, for example?
Yeah. So my name is DuAn Lightfoot. I am a developer advocate for AWS. I'm an Air Force veteran, which is how I got my start in tech. I'm also a network engineer that automates and gets to do cool stuff in the cloud. I love what I do. As well as I'm a YouTuber and content creator that focuses on helping others advance their careers in tech. I mentioned that I love what I do. every day I get to wake up and learn something new. And for me, it's a blessing. You know, it's a lot of people that hate going to work. You know, they just they really don't enjoy it. But
Yeah.
you know, for me, I am passionate about it. Even when I was in operations, you know, it never really stressed me out because an outage is just another opportunity to find that ACL that's blocking
The port that
connectivity.
the
Right.
service owner who so elegantly asked us to open.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, but that's a great way to look at it. But I don't know. For me personally, it's almost like you can't be happy every day, but as long as you're not unhappy for like 20 days in a row, right? then,
Yeah.
then I'm okay. I could settle for, happy most of the time.
Man, that's a good point. You know, I had posted something on Twitter yesterday about because people have been telling me that, hey, you know, you're winning, like you keep passing all these certifications, things are going
Right.
great.
Right.
But I don't get too happy when I win, but I
Mm,
also don't get too down when I lose
sure.
because, you know, just growing up in my childhood, every time something good would happen, something bad was right around the corner. And so what I learned was that when the good things happen, be prepared for something bad to happen. And when the bad things happen, find the good in that moment or be prepared for something good to happen. And, you know, and just kind of keep a balanced approach so you can always remain focused and on course.
Yeah, that's a very zen of you. So, because of the pandemic, I think I took up the habit of meditation, and I use this app called no affiliation, but I use this app called 10% Happier.
Mm,
And some of the teaching that they have the meditation teacher show you was kind of being an observant role to say something good happened, like you mentioned, Duan, that uh, you're just kind of observing it go. You can
yeah.
feel happy, but don't be too influenced by it. And if something bad happens, on the other hand, you could just kind of observe it as well, like looking at the waterfall, and you just kind of making a mental note and say, okay, you know, this is bad, and I feel angry. But instead of react to it, then you could be calm and respond to it, like you mentioned.
Yeah. You know, in 2020, my grandmother passed away.
Mm,
And like in that same month, you know, I was doing a giveaway every day of the month. Like you actually helped me, you know, give away your book. I
hmm.
think you gave me like 10 copies of your book to give away. And I think we gave away over $100,000 worth of like content
Wow.
in that month. But in that same month, my grandmother died.
Hmm.
So I was happy and excited to help people, but then I'm crushed because my grandmother passed away.
Yeah.
And then I get hired by Cisco DevNet. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's like, so you just kind of remain, you know, balanced and just accept the things that come, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you because things always happen like that, right? So I remember even when we were originally scheduled to record a session on your channel the first time, and I think your one of your best friend actually passed away, and you were on a flight to attend his funeral
Yeah.
during that time frame, and of course you're always trying to be positive and all of that, but that was a difficult time too. So it's always like the ups and downs, and like you said, you just have to kind of keep even keeled and don't be too high or too low so that you could remain focused on your goals.
Yeah. I mean, I know there's been times, you know, like let's just keep it in tech, like
Sure.
failing a certification that you worked really hard for.
Yeah.
Like for some people, that will knock them off course, like
Yeah.
for a long time, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I learned that, okay, if I got, I think I learned this doing the CCNA is that, okay, I failed the CCNA the first time. Well, that means there's things I don't know.
Hmm.
And so if I don't know these things, that means when I walk in an interview, I'm not going to be able to talk about them. So this is my opportunity to sharpen my sword so I can pass
Yeah.
this exam and
Right.
be prepared to get the job that I want. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's perfect, right? Because would you rather fail an interview or would you rather fail a certification test?
Exactly.
This is just one more chance for you to discover your weak points and to like patch those holes, right?
Yep.
That's nice. So you mentioned both network engineering and cloud computing. So how did you get started in either? Like, how did you get started in network engineering and eventually go into trying to tell the stories for networking in the cloud?
Yeah. So I love to connect things. And when I started in tech back in 2000 in the Air Force, I was on the help desk. And I think I told this story several times, but in that time on the help desk, we were migrating from Windows NT to Windows 2000. And, I'm learning system administration and things of that nature. But what I really found was that the networking piece, like, excuse me, the networking piece, like, intrigued me the absolute most. We had a guy on our team named Pat. He was like the person that knew everything. And he actually got his CCNA, ended up getting out of the military. And so when he got that, I was like, what's the CCNA that
Yeah.
was allowed you to get out the military? Because in 2001, I don't like, if you had the CCNA back then, you were on top of everything.
Yeah.
And so when he got that, it just kind of always stuck with me throughout. But it was just a mountain that I thought I couldn't reach
Hmm.
until about, I think it was 2013.
Hmm.
So 13 years later, when I was
Yeah.
like, you know what, I think I'm gonna try this. And so I started learning networking and ended up, getting the CCENT. And I'm like, I'm really loving this. And at the time, I was a network technician for an ammunition company. And so we had
Hmm.
about 40 buildings, which was, I don't know, 40,000 acres. It was a huge infrastructure. And
Yeah.
so, but it was flat. It was pretty much all layer two.
Nice. What could possibly go wrong?
Right. What could go wrong with a
Yeah, in
40
the
acre,
flat. Yeah, exactly.
broadcast domain? Like, nothing.
Right.
So in that time, I got to learn a lot, about networking,
Mhm.
from, you know, collision domains to broadcast storms to um, port channels and port misconfigurations.
Sure.
And then I had a project to configure networking to get rid of some of those layer two domains that we had. And so at that time, I was working on my CCNA. So while I'm learning the CCNA, I made it to apply it at work, and that just increased my excitement for networking. And that's just kind of how I got started. I can go on and on about this, but we'll just kind of pause there.
No, that's the best way to learn, right? Because you learn something at night, and then you immediately saw the impact, or immediately could apply in your day job. That kind of make that knowledge stick.
Yeah,
So that's perfect. I think a lot of people would probably roger that as well. People who are studying for. I mean, for a time when I was studying for my IE, I was working for Juniper, right? So I was like in the daytime, I was doing all these Junos, or back then it was
yeah,
NetScreen, so like Screen OS stuff and troubleshooting, dig really deep, talk to a developer. And then at night, I have to do a whole context shift and, starting for the iOS commands and then do these other stuff. So it was really hard. But in your case, that was perfect. You just kind of, have your study session at night and then apply it in the morning.
yeah. For my CCNP, it was a totally different situation. I was working for the government as a system
Mm.
administrator while I got my
Oh,
CCNP. So that was a
oh,
totally
wow.
different situation. So I can relate to you.
Right, right. Yeah, so it's I could imagine that's a little different than doing just purely networking. But now you're doing cloud computing as well. So how did what made you want to change, and what intrigued you about cloud computing that you want to kind of dig deeper into it?
That's a great question, because when you think about being a network engineer, oftentimes, specifically in larger organizations, we're siloed. So you can have a LAN team, you can have a WAN team, you can have a data center team, a firewall team, and even a cloud team, right?
Right.
And so when I back in 20 2019,
Hmm.
I decided that I wanted to go for my CCIE, which if I could give any advice to anybody, if you get your CCNP and you have it in your mind to get your CCIE, keep going. Don't stop.
Nice.
Like keep going.
Yeah.
So while I'm deciding to go for my CCIE, I'm looking at the industry and I'm seeing, okay, do I want to be a CCIE route switch? Because at the time I don't think we had the new CCIEs.
Yeah.
So I was CCIE route switch. Do I want to go enterprise? Do I want to go security? And I'm just kind of asking myself these questions. And at the time I wanted to go route switch, but then the pandemic happened.
Mm.
And I'm like, you know what? Let me reevaluate this again because the Cisco came out with the new certifications. And so it's now you have the enterprise as well as I think we still had the data center. So I started questioning, looking at the industry. I was working for like a hospital MSP that was responsible for all of the hospital, like 500 hospitals across the country.
Wow.
And we were standing up VPNs for these hospitals because they needed to expand their infrastructures.
Yeah.
And so while this is happening, I'm like, you know what? The amount of time that it's taken to expand these infrastructure is really changing how businesses operate. I don't think I want to stick to traditional networking. I was either going to go data center or the cloud, but only experience I had with the cloud was connecting VPNs to the cloud, extending infrastructure to the cloud, but not actually in the cloud building VPCs and all of that.
Right.
But I always wanted to, but I also am the type of person that I don't like to study things that I don't do.
Mhm.
But at the time I was learning ACI, I'm doing data center, I'm on Nexus every day, I'm on MPLS every day. So I was like, okay, well, until I can get cloud experience, I'll just go to data center track, right?
Yeah.
Well, it just so happened while I'm at DevNet, the director from or my manager from AWS reaches out to me and offers me an opportunity to come to AWS and learn the cloud. So I'm like, you know what? I really want to learn this. This is something I always wanted to do. Let's go
Mhm.
for
Yeah. So I am dying to know because
it.
has it been 3 months since you made the jump?
Yes, it's been 3 months.
Yes.
I reached my 90 days.
Got it. Yeah. So it's been 3 months, and you were like you were mentioning, you were maybe at the edge of the cloud, right? Like you were touching the cloud, but not exactly like inside building VPCs and doing uh, spinning up VMs and tearing them down. So what surprised you the most, or what was your biggest takeaways in these 90 days when you just you're onboarding and you're like learning day and night? What's your takeaway 90 days into the cloud advocate?
This is why we have infrastructure as code.
Explain, my friend, please.
That was like one of the first light bulb moments is that your entire infrastructure is a state file.
Hmm.
Your entire infrastructure is a file that contains all the resources that you need in the cloud.
Right. Right.
And so you can deploy, maintain, configure your infrastructure straight from code. You can monitor the state and in code. And so when you talk about infrastructure as code, it's specifically around the cloud. And
Right. Right.
go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, so can you explain a little bit the difference between, like, say, VLANs, right? So VLAN is still a partitioning, you're, kind of abstracting the physical layer into like a layer two domain, and like you said, you're partitioning things. But a VPC is a little different than the VLAN, right? Like, how can you kind of explain what you said about your whole infrastructure is a file versus like, maybe you could, kind of derive your infrastructure from various configurations.
I think you're reading my mind, Eric, because when it
Hey.
comes, yes, because as network engineers, we're used to looking at layer two VLANs and then your layer three routing domains, right?
Yeah.
But when it comes to the VPC, You do have subnets, but broadcasts don't exist.
Right.
So that's one piece. The second piece is VLANs as we know it don't exist. So
Right.
if you have multiple subnets that are their own subnets, every subnet in a VPC can communicate because the VPC knows all IP addresses that are in the VPC.
Right. Yeah. So I think that was a huge um, that was a huge milestone for the cloud in general, of the creation of the VPC, if you will, in my opinion, anyways, Duan.
Right.
So I remember, when back when, in the Stone Age when I first joined AWS, um, it was a flat network, right? Then
Yeah.
and the first thing that people so I joined when S3 was there, and then the next year EC2 launched, and that took off like a rocket. But back then, EC2, everything was still on the flat network, and they call it EC2 Classic, and they
Right.
like finally deprecated, like I don't know, 2 years ago or something. But the first thing that people were dying to request was, security, right? That was the
Right.
number one question. If everything is on a flat network, what about security? So VPC was what they set out to be, like the smartest folks within AWS needs to solve this problem in order for it to grow. And
Right.
VPC was the kind of the solution they came up with. They could name it anything, but because they wanted it to be friendly to like the network engineers like you and me, they decided to pick a familiar name. And I remember sitting in a room listening to kind of the prototype that they were talking about how this VPC will work.
Right.
And that was crazily like lightning moment, right? Like I'm like, this is gonna change everything. And as you were alluded to, it's like everything is now virtual. Like
Yeah.
if you think of the MAC address, you used to think that's the burn-in address, and that's burned in. But no,
It's
in
elastic.
VPC, yeah, it's not, right? Like you
Yeah.
could fake your MAC address and all of
Yeah.
that. So besides that, I mean, is there anything else that you were kind of took you by surprise, or coming from like a more traditional background, that you found very, very interesting in AWS networking?
Yeah. It's all interesting to me. I think one thing we need to clarify is VPC is virtual private cloud and not
Yes,
virtual
yes.
port channel.
No. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, we took that for granted, didn't we?
Yeah. So um I'm to be honest with you, I'm still trying to find the perfect analogy for a VPC in the cloud,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
VPC in general, but it's a data center. Inside of that one VPC, all of your traditional network constructs are happening. We just don't always see them because they're abstracted.
So previously, as like you said, we have a networking team which
Right.
controls of the ACOs within the network, and then we have the system administrators who, if they do the IP tables on the host level of ACOs on that way, or control your firewalls that way. But now within the cloud, everything's virtual, and you could actually configure both into the same configuration file on both the host level ACOs as well as the network level ACOs, which is, like you said, infrastructure as code.
Yeah. I think we should do this again and actually put up, yeah, a PowerPoint or a diagram, or actually get into the AWS console so we can kind of walk through this, because um, that's kind of one of the things about the cloud is that we can talk about it, but as network engineers, I don't. I'll talk about myself specifically. I'm
Sure.
visual, so
Mhm.
anytime we're talking about a network solution, I'm hopping in Visio and I'm diagramming it up. And so you gotta kind of do the same thing in the cloud, but you got to get used to the boxes that we use to display the VPC. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And kind of understand how things are diagrammed and laid out in AWS.
Yeah. And I totally agree. And I think lucky for us, we were chatting before the recording that, you're just about ready to tell that cloud story, and you have a lot of contents geared up to be released, right?
Yeah, I'm excited for it too.
Yeah.
I haven't been excited since I started network automation.
Oh, wow. So
Yeah.
I really look forward to that, because I know, once you get excited and you're very motivated, it's almost like you open the floodgate, right? Like it's
Yes.
just like, bam, you get the full experience, you're
Yes.
almost knocking off your feet. So that's cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we should probably also talk about what we alluded to in the beginning, where you were talking about, you're black and you're in the tech industry, and that kind of presents itself in a unique combination and challenges. So can you tell us a little bit about that? What your thought? You say you have a unique perspective, and I'm really eager to learn.
Yeah. So challenges of being black in IT. I think we can talk about being underrepresented, right?
Yes.
But I think that's kind of changing for people that are getting in IT. Some of the problems that we face were the lack of the resources, like in our communities.
Hmm.
So a lot of times, people from the hood, for lack of better words, when
Sure.
we make a certain dollar amount, we move out, right?
Hmm.
And so growing up, I didn't never seen software developers, network engineers, and anybody in IT. And I talked to people that are in high school and coming from the inner city. They're pretty much the same thing. When they talk to me, I'm the first network engineer or developer advocate even that they even know about. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so I think that lack of seeing people that look like you, the lack of resources were part of our problem. But I think the bigger problem right now is the lack of representation at the top.
Okay.
If you look at the entire list of Fortune 500 companies, right?
Hmm.
Since the beginning of the list, there's only been 19 black CEOs.
Mm,
Currently, there's four black CEOs. So if there's 500 companies, there's four black CEOs. That's under 1%.
right.
Then, if you go even deeper than that, there's never been a majority black owned Fortune 500 company.
Oh, really? Okay.
Never. So, when you talk about the challenges that we face, now we're able to get in tech, but how do we advance in tech? How do we
Right.
get past mid level? Because, yes, I do see black execs on a lot of major companies now, but most of them are in diversity.
Hmm.
That's not people that are in tech. That's not people that are making decisions for hiring people that are black in tech. Like, I want to see us in positions, and it's not even just in positions, but have the ability to maybe even create our own and then grow that business to the point to where it's a Fortune 500 company, so we can have that representation that we need to really make a change in this industry.
Yeah, I think you brought up a good point about representation, and I I don't know. Can I say context? So say context matters, right? Like, in this context, that you need to be able to identify uh, with that, so that it's a possibility, and for you to move forward. Like, if I've never seen a millionaire, then in my immediate surrounding, then the mindset's very different from, I grew up in a place where millionaires are in a neighborhood where millionaires are commonplace, where I think it's a given for me to go to like an Ivy League college or whatever. So I think the
Yeah,
context does matter, and representation does matter a whole lot. But you also mentioned a good point about not just represent, but also extend further, and be a decision maker, right?
right. A decision maker, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Um, I think about something as simple as salaries that everybody can relate to
Hmm.
in tech. You don't know to ask for 100,000 until you realize that other people in your field are making 100,000. You
Mm,
don't know to ask for 200,000 until you realize that other people in the field are making 200,000. Same for 300,000 and above. You know what I mean?
right.
And
Right.
so once you see others that have made it there, then you can start peeling back the onion to find out how they did it. And then you can start building those same skills or using those same resources so you can obtain it as well.
Yeah, I think it's I want to say it's the sports genes, the books, the sports genes, but it could be some other book that I've read. But so they were talking about, for a long, long time, they thought the 10-second 100-yard dash was a human barrier. Like,
Mm,
no human could possibly
right,
break the 10 seconds.
right,
And so for a long time, nobody did. But the first time, once that first person crossed that barrier, I think it came in like 9.96 or whatever.
right.
and there's like 5 other people in the next year who broke that. And you
Right.
see that over and over. It's like 40-yard dash or even the 6-minute mile or
Yeah.
whatever that is. It's like for a long time, nobody thought it was possible. But once somebody did it, then people look at it and say, it's possible and we could all do it.
Yep. And to me, that's what representation means.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like, representation, if you just not just for any human being, right? Because that's really broad, but
Right.
like human beings like you and me, or like look like you and me, who did
Right.
it, then
Right.
that means even more.
Hmm.
Yeah, cool. So we also talked about, you have to be more mentally tough. You maybe have to work extra hard for the same kind of validation. Do you feel that's the case, or do you feel that's kind of changing right now?
Yeah. So in tech, you have to be mentally tough. Like that's
Hmm.
just what it is. Because there's times where you have to deal with difficult teammates, difficult leadership, difficult customers, and then challenges of the actual job. So you have to be mentally tough to manage all of that. And
Hmm.
sometimes, you'll have a great team, you'll have great leadership, you'll have a great customer, but the job can be grueling. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for
So
sure.
you have to be able to manage that because as a network engineer, if you're in operations, there's going to come a time where you don't know something. Like that's just a part of it. And so you have to know how to navigate that. You have to know to you have to know when to find an answer. You got to know when to get out the rabbit hole. You got to know when to ask for help. You got to know when to provide feedback. you know, you got to know how to provide documentation. You got to know how to provide, um, whatever's needed for the job. Like
Yeah.
it can be really demanding in operations. So I think learning how to manage stress, learning how to be mentally tough is something that we all have to do, whether you're black or white. But specifically as a black man or a black woman, the challenges of feeling like you have to work harder than everybody. I don't
Hmm.
really think that's fair, but a lot
Hmm.
of times we feel that way. It may not
Mm.
even be true, but just because um, the stereotypes and the perception is that we're lazy or we're not smart enough or we're not good enough. Sometimes we internalize that, and it can be hard to navigate an organization if you don't have leadership that looks like you, that can mentor you on how to know when the thoughts that you're having are true, valid, or when those thoughts are not valid, and you just need to, take a step back and approach the situation differently.
Yeah. So what are some of the advices that you could give for people to build mental toughness, not just for, not just for black or white or Asian, but just to build mental toughness in general? Because you obviously hacked that. It's almost like you came through with, your some of your challenges and you came through. So how do you build that mental toughness?
Yeah, I think you build that mental. Let me start over.
Sure.
I think you build that mental toughness through experience,
Okay.
through failure, through learning from your failure,
Hmm.
through growing through the challenges. That's how you build it. Like it's not something you can just practice without actually going through
You mean
it.
I can't get buff just by watching you lift weights?
Exactly. No, you can't. It's not going
Oh,
to happen.
darn. That's what I've been doing wrong.
I think and so with that being said, if you're in operations, like don't back away from a challenge. Don't cherry pick tickets.
Hmm.
If something is hard and you've been avoiding it, take the challenge and be okay with failing. Be okay with getting stuck. Be okay with having to ask for help and learning from it. So you don't have to ask for help again. Like that's the only way you grow.
Hmm. But what about the time when, um let's just say you have to be good, right? Like you can't lose this job. I know a lot of us, feel the pressure, like, you got a mortgage and two house payments or whatever. Hey, I don't know what you did wrong, but two house payments. Maybe your ex-wife, I don't know. But you're under pressure in reality, and you have to keep this job. Then how can you tolerate mistakes when you feel like your butt is on the line, right? I mean, that's
Yeah,
a tough question. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but it's just it kind of occurs to me as we talk, right? Like, how do you have any thoughts on that, or you just kind of you have to just gut through it?
yeah. There's a couple ways to approach it. I can just
Okay,
talk about myself.
sure.
Early in my career, when I didn't take my career serious and I wasn't a IT professional, I had those fears, right? I worried about not being good enough. I worried about losing my job. But when I realized that I needed to learn not just my actual job and take that serious, but I had to learn outside of work so I can grow my skills, grow my relationships, grow my soft skills, my technical skills. I mentioned relationships and do all of those pieces. Once I started doing that, I kind of looked at the way I approach corporate America differently because if I go into this job and I give everything I got and it doesn't work and I fail, like I may have a house payment, I may have this, but part of that is on me for um I need to manage my finances better. And that's something that I had to do personally. That's why I'm speaking for myself. I learned to not live above my means and manage my finances better. So that way, if something does happen, I can recover from it and not be tied to a position because I mentioned operations is hard. Like
Yeah,
it's really hard.
yeah,
Not all the time, but it can be. And so when those hard times come, you have to realize that, all right, is the job actually hard, or do I actually need help on my team? Do not have enough manpower? Are they calling me every night on call? Do I not have any weekends, any time to myself? Like at some point you have to realize maybe I need to find another job, you know?
yeah, yeah. I think I hear you. One of my favorite books lately that I'm reading, it's called The Psychology of Money.
Hmm.
And one thing they talked about, and like I bought the book and I read the book and now I'm listening to the audiobook, right? I rarely do that, but that's
Yeah,
just how much I enjoy the book.
nice.
And I actually like made my wife listen to it as well. So, and one of the chapters they talk about was, I mean, they talk about many, many good points, but one of the good points they talked about was to be in the game, right? Like you have to be in the game in order to enjoy the compound. Like you could be saving all of your God, um, but you have to be in the game in order so you cannot make any decision that will wipe you out, right? Like
Right.
will clean you. Like they were talking about, I think it was chapter 2, they were talking about people being really greedy,
Mhm.
so they were using the money they don't have to try to make the money that they don't need, and by using the money they do have, then they do need, and then you just kind of wipe them out, right? So back to what you were saying is, if I get it correct, right? Like, and I thought it's very important. The point that you brought up was you have to build up your mindset and your macro skill, like your personal, relationships, your mental toughness, in order for you to stay in the game. Doesn't really matter what comes to you, right?
Right.
Operations tough when you get paged, and then your lack of sleep, maybe your kids are not behaving, you're grumpy, but you still have a way to calm yourself down and proceed, at least be in the game.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, sometimes in operations and just in tech in general, you're going to fail. And being able to talk about that failure in an interview and
Yeah,
what you learn from it, how you overcame it, how you handle it, like sometimes that can get you a job just because you were able to experience that failure, learn from it, grow from it, reassess it, and tell what you would do differently. Like
yeah,
sometimes that can be the thing that gets you over the hump rather
right.
than, like being afraid, being ashamed. Like, no, don't be ashamed of it. Like it happened. And this is what I learned.
Yeah, I don't know, as I don't know if it's still true, but legend has it that when you join Facebook and you went through the boot camp, and during the boot camp, what they asked you to actually to write some code and merge into production, like
Oh wow.
actual Facebook, like during on ramp, right?
Yeah.
Like you're going through the boot camp and then you merge code into production. And if you break something, you actually get an email from Facebook and say, congratulations, you broke something. And now it's time to like go fix it. And, like learn from him and move on, right? I don't know if you break something for the second time, they're gonna be as lenient. But I thought that was kind of funny. That's just another book that I'm reading, and legend has it, right? I haven't yet to be confirmed. So if any Facebook employee, have listened to this podcast, and please call me and confirm or deny that rumor, so I could sleep better at night knowing whether that's true or false.
That's hilarious. That's like for real Chaos Monkey. That would be like awesome to have like Hire Friday or Interview Friday, and
Right.
just have them go in there and break something, and just have the operations team try to figure out what they did wrong.
Yeah, you're like, hey, you said it was cool to turn off that data center. And the Chaos Monkey confirmed it, but guess what? It's weekend on us, and let me go order some pizza so we can work over the weekend.
Right. Two-piece teams.
Yeah, two pizza teams. Yeah, that's kind of an insider joke, right? Like, so so for the AWS, that used to be a one pizza team where
Wow.
they encourage a small team so it doesn't get dragged down by too many chefs in the kitchen, basically, right? But eventually it's not realistic to just have a one pizza team, so they increase it to two pizza teams.
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm surprised like now it's still two pizza, maybe it's like extra large. Some of
It's
the
still
teams,
2 pieces.
yeah, everybody needs to just eat one pepperoni.
Right.
Yeah, because I mean, even when I was there, which was like 10 years ago, some of the teams were definitely not two pizza teams.
Man.
But yeah, no, I mean, you're right. And what are some of the things that you came across lately that that you think it's worth sharing? And I'm gonna pull up I mean, if you're listening to the podcast, I'll include all the links in the show notes. But if you're watching the YouTube video, I'm pulling up DuAn's Medium blog post, and I think he mentioned that's what he's been concentrating on, just to write more blog posts. Obviously, you could follow him on Twitter, as well as watch some of the videos that or all of the videos that he posts online. But things that he's concentrating on lately is the Medium blog post. So did you want to speak a little bit about these two articles that you've published, and maybe some of the stuff that you plan on publishing later on?
Yeah, so excuse me. I'm a post on my Medium as well as my YouTube. And the goal is to share the things that I've been learning on AWS, and to inspire others and help others, build on AWS and advance their career.
Okay, cool. So I saw this first post. That's pretty amazing. It's like how I passed AWS Solution Architect exam in a month. So we were chatting, right? Like, this is an absolute monster test to be done in a month. Especially if you started from like zero. So how did you do it? Like, how short of people go read this whole article, which is a short read, it's like 7 minutes, but can you give a gist of it? That's something you've been working on, right?
Yeah. So I spent 90 hours total in a month studying for this exam. 45 hours of that were strictly lab.
Oh, okay.
The remaining time was broken up to watching videos and studying my note cards, which are practice tests from Wiz Labs. But to be honest, it's a lot of information to try to achieve in a month. Like, for much of the time, I felt comfortable, but there were times where I just felt like I was drinking from a fire hose, because you can spend weeks learning about EC2, VPC, Lambda functions, you name CloudFront, CloudFormation, all of these services on AWS you can go really in depth on. So some of it I just really had to scratch the surface, and then now that I passed the exam, I went on to pass the developer certification, and kind of continue my learning journey there.
Oh, wow. Okay. So what are some of the things that, or some of the exams that you have lined up? Like, what's your kind of roadmap to into mastery of a um, cloud engineer?
Yeah, mastery, I can't see that happening in 6 months. I'm gonna be honest
Really?
with you. It's not gonna happen in 6 months.
All right, I'll take
This
your
is
word for it.
yeah, so this is a journey where I'm gonna spend the first year pretty much just exploring everything about a VPC.
Yeah.
Exploring all the attachments for VPC, all the different services. I think we have over 30 networking services
Oh
that are
wow,
just networking. So
crazy.
exploring those services and learning more about those, and then writing and building content around that information.
Yeah, it's amazing how far they've come on the amount of services, and it's crazy that you mentioned there's 30 networking services that I mean, and what you said about mastery, for sure. I mean, it took me certainly longer than 6 months to actually get like a production ready um, instance, right? So,
Yeah,
it really depends on what you're after. I think you would be lucky in order to know, I don't know, 5 services really well, and
right,
to be able to, do something in production with it. So for me, I think for me, I used on the daily basis. So VMs for sure, right? EC2, of course, Route 53 for
right,
DNS management, and all of the underlying architecture, right? VPC, as you mentioned, or NAT gateways, internet gateways, so associated route tables, Lambda functions, API gateway that ties into the Lambda function,
right.
and then flow log, right? So those
VPC
are,
flow log.
yeah. So
Yeah.
like, if you just count those, that's more than 5, and I don't think I mastered any of them. Like I just be good enough to get by and launch the service that like that.
Right. But I mean, if you think about it, the solutions architect associate's exam is about understanding this. We have over 200 services. So it's going to be kind of hard to study that exam and learn all 200 services. So it's
Right.
more so understanding these services and how they differentiate the different services and how you can help a customer build on AWS and find the best service or solution for their situation. Right.
Right. Right. Right.
So
Right.
there's experts in particular domains that actually build and maintain the services, but you as a solutions architect, you're designing. It's just like being a network architect. You understand, you listen to the customer to find out what they need, and then
Hmm.
you understand the different designs to help customers solve problems. You're not always the one implementing that design, and so the nuances that an engineer may face in building out the architecture, sometimes they run into problems that the architect didn't foresee because
Hmm.
they're actually the one building. You know what I mean? And so the
Yeah.
same thing could happen as a solutions architect. So it's a really a journey as you're learning AWS. It's not something that you're just going to pick up overnight.
Yeah, for sure. And plus, like they're coming out with new services like what, every other month.
Right.
So it's like 200 and counting, right? By the
It's
time this
200 counting.
podcast released, it's like 225. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's over 200 services. But man, it's I'm having a blast right now. Like
Hmm.
I I wouldn't have never thought I'd be here, last year or the year before that. You asked me 10 years ago, I didn't even think I would be a network engineer at that. You know what I mean? So, I'm blessed. I'm thankful.
Yeah, I mean that speaks to part of your positive attitude, right? Like I really appreciate that, Duan. I mean, I don't know if I mentioned it enough, right? But it's like every time I talk to you or listen to your podcast, or not podcast, watch your video, or see your inspirational tweets. It's like it helps me a little bit, like lift me up a little bit, right? I'm like, you know you're so lucky to have all of these, and what are you complaining about, right? Like, don't be down on stuff. So I think it's really cool what you're doing on helping others and being vulnerable, right? Even just admitting, like you said, operation is hard. Admitting
Yeah.
that. I mean, so I've been in situations where I talk to engineers, and it's almost like it's hard for them to admit any kind of gap in knowledge or failure.
Right.
It's like they feel it's a sign of weakness, and they always have to be, I don't know, the alpha male or whatever, right? But it's cool that you show that you can be vulnerable and come out at the end of them being successful.
Yeah, I'm just honest. I don't look at it as being vulnerable. I think I'm just honest about my experiences, and I don't really have. I try not to hide anything. You know, I'm not perfect. You know
Right.
that everybody has something that that they may be ashamed of or whatever. But I do my best to own the things that I do and that happen in my life. You know, I don't allow anybody else to take the blame. You know, I just try to share my own experience from my own standpoint.
Yeah, that's cool, man. I appreciate that. I think that's the key is taking ownership versus thinking things are happening to you.
Right.
So, but you're taking ownership, so you know you're in control of how you respond. So
Hmm.
it's like you can't control what's happening to you, but what you can control is your mindset and how you respond to it.
Yeah.
And that's what I get from most of your tweets and videos, and it's just like, sure, bad things happen to good people, but people respond differently, and that's what you can control.
Hey man, look, Chris Rock got smacked in the face on live TV in front of millions of people, and he handled that like I've never seen nobody handle a situation like he handled that.
Hmm.
Like to turn it into a joke and then to carry on, man, that takes resilience.
Yeah, I just heard what he said on. And by the way, when we record this, I think that happened like 2 days ago, right?
Yeah.
If you don't know, go Google it. But it's a big incident. You must have lived under a rock or something if you haven't thought about it. But I think he responded brilliantly, right? He went on
Yeah.
stage. I think he was in Boston the day after or 2 days after, and said, I don't have anything prepared for you because I already prepared for this, comic gig. So I'm sorry, I don't have anything, but I'll talk about it and let's move on.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. He did responded brilliantly, and I think we all have our own opinions about the incident. But
Right.
regardless of your opinion, you can't say that he didn't handle it as well as he could.
Yeah. He handled that like man, because I don't know if I could handle it the same way. You know, I'm cool, but that's just a different situation. And he,
Right.
man,
Just because you're Zen doesn't mean you don't get angry. You just
oh
like
yeah,
react accordingly, respond
right,
accordingly.
right.
Yeah, that's funny that you brought it up, but it's appropriate. Um, so Duran, I think this next question, I had it because you were talking about some of your, I was watching one of your videos, and you were talking about, your upbringings and your experiences and your mindset. So I was, and I think you exactly said that on, these are the things I would tell myself,
Mm,
my younger self from 10 years ago.
right.
And I thought that was really insightful. Do you remember any of those things that you talked about before, and say, these are the things I would tell my younger self 10 years ago?
Yeah, I remember some of them.
Sure.
One specifically is save money.
Okay.
Like that's, in my opinion, I'm not telling you to be extremely frugal, like talking to my younger self 10 years ago, but
Mhm.
I think it's important to establish foundation on the amount of income that you make. Don't live above your means,
Mhm.
because anything can happen in life. And if you are securing your income, you don't have to make decisions that you don't want to make.
Right.
You're more in control of your life. So save money. The
Okay.
second thing is going to be have tunnel vision.
Okay.
I mentioned about the CCIE. If you have your CCNP, continue on to the CCIE if that's your goal. Like my one regret, like I don't have too many regrets, but my one regret is not staying the course for the CCIE.
Mm.
Like I look back on that and I'm like, people call me successful, but I think I failed myself by not sticking to something that I was really hyper focused on.
Hmm.
Um, After I passed my CCNP, I said, you know, I want to help people because as I was preparing for the CCNA and CCNP on YouTube, blog posts, social medias, training videos, I didn't see anybody black that was talking about Cisco networking. And so I decided to make YouTube videos and help people. And
Yeah.
so I guess, that was kind of my path, but I wish I would have just did that after my CCIE. I would have spent another 6 months because I think at that point, like I was so embedded in networking and I was so hyper focused that I could have probably got it in 6 months the first time.
Hmm.
So have a singular focus and stick to your goal. The third thing is going to be never doubt yourself.
Okay.
People will tell you that you can't do something, but just because they have their own limitations, don't allow them to put those limitations on you. You
Right.
can do anything that you put your mind to. The fourth thing is stay consistent.
Hmm.
Like when I think about the journey for the CCIE, that's a consistent grind. That's not something that you can do for 3 weeks and take a week off. That's something where every day, lab every day, pretty much has to be a lifestyle. And I think
Yeah.
for anything that you're trying to build, whether it's a YouTube channel, a podcast, you have to be consistent in it in order to be successful. And the last thing, which is the fifth thing, is going to be have fun
Hmm.
in life. Things happen. You're not always going to pass a certification. You're not always going to get the job that you want. The job that you want isn't always going to be the job you thought it was going to be. You really have to just take a step back and have fun, regardless of what happened in your life. Enjoy the journey and embrace it. So those are the 5 things.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I think, man, those 5 things, I feel like there could be like an episode on each of these, right? Like save money. Um, I mean, I think we talked about it, maybe not on camera, or maybe it was one of your episodes, but like, I didn't grow up with a lot of money. And the reason I picked finance as my college major was, I thought, we're good people, but why are we always poor?
Yeah.
Like, why always worry about money?
Right.
And we work hard, we're good people. And why is that? So I wanted to study money. And of course, that become, kind of a obsession of mine to,
Right.
read about money, the Psychology of Money book I mentioned, and all of that. And like, stay consistent, Atomic Habits, one of my favorite books,
Yeah.
learning how to learn, those kind of stuff. So I really appreciate those advices that you've given out. I think those are really sound. And it's almost like we could elaborate endlessly on all of that.
Yeah. We can. We can. Yeah. I just can't stress enough how important it is to live within your means. Like we live in America, so it's like the number one marketed like place in the world. If somebody wants to
Yeah.
sell something, they bring it to America.
Yeah.
And there's all types of distractions. Even in IT, there's all types of distractions on what you need to learn today.
Mhm.
you know, and so learning how to really focus and surround yourself with like-minded people or people that are going to push you to be better and knowing how to manage your time, manage your energy, manage your income. You just knowing how to manage yourself, like that's important.
But that takes time though. I don't even
Yeah,
feel like, yeah, so you're right about, like telling your younger self, because that's precisely it. It's like these kind of stuff really takes time to
yep.
learn, even just about yourself.
I'm still working on it. Like I need to manage my weight, so I still haven't managed one thing yet.
Hey, you and
I
I
still got
both,
one
brother.
thing.
You and I both. Yeah, I mean, just between you and me, I gained 20 pounds
Oh man,
during the pandemic just
pandemic.
because I wasn't watching it.
Yeah, it's easy to do, man. But hey, we can fix it though. We can
Yes,
fix
yes, we have the technology, which is
it.
just some weights and some cardio,
Yes.
and the being consistent, right? Like what you were
Yes.
talking about.
Yes. Being consistent.
Yeah, no, I love all of those advices. And if you're willing, we should touch base again in like a year or so after you get more, and we'll compare and contrast to this episode, right? Like a year from now, what, does he have the same answer? Does he have the same mindset about some of these other stuff? And recount on the all the stuff that DuAn has gone from March of 2022 and to, like, I don't know, March of 2023.
Man, I love that, man. You my boy, Eric. So just say the word and I'm here.
Yes, and maybe I'll have like my sneakers on the back or something, right? Because
Right.
but to your point about save money, I should given up on buying all the latest kicks, but all the previous ones, it's enough to fill the wall, really. I'm ashamed to admit that, but yeah, we should probably do this again and touch base in like a year or 6 months, and just, if nothing else, you're just a cool dude to talk to.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I'm all for it, bro.
All right, cool. Yeah, we're coming up on an hour, but tell people where they could find you on social, or any other place that you might be producing content.
For sure. First, thanks for having me on, Eric. This has been like a great conversation. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
You're awesome.
You all can find me at Lab Every Day on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, which I don't use much, Facebook, which I don't use much either. Yeah, Twitter, I mentioned that, as well as DuAn Lightfoot on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out to me and check my Medium. If you're into reading blog posts, check my labeveryday.medium.com. I'm posting blogs weekly there around AWS. Hopefully they will help you. And if you have questions, please feel free to DM me directly. That's a double entendre, ain't it? DM me directly.
Yeah, I mean, be careful what you ask for. Right. You're gonna be like, just answering. You're gonna you have to hire a personal assistant to handle that, because people would ask you and hit you up on DMs. But I do enjoy all of your content. Of course, we'll include all the links in the show notes, and for sure, we'll talk again, DuAn. Thanks for being on the show.
Yep, thank you, Eric.
So you've been listening to Network Automation Nerds Podcast. Find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and all the other podcast platforms. Until next time, bye-bye.